Hello, it's Mio and welcome to this Draw With Me video where I will be drawing, surprise surprise. This time I'll be drawing a page in my sketchbook using coloring pencils and alcohol-based markers. I wanted to draw some birds because I like drawing birds, so I decided on a crow or a raven that is kind of screaming into the air. And yeah, I was inspired by this reference picture that I found that had really neat blue colors in it. So I wanted to kind of experiment with like blue reflective light on a crow. So that was kind of the concept. I didn't really have much of a plan for the rest of this page, honestly, but I did know that I wanted to add some graphic touch by adding these kind of lightning strikes that are supposed to symbolize that the raven is screaming into the air. So I added those in there before going in with the coloring pencils. And I started with black color, and then I will be using some blues, starting with the darkest ones, going into the lighter ones to get kind of a shiny effect on the beak. The quality of the video is a little bit whack at the moment. It gets better in 3:1, there it is, a lot better, because I zoomed in on the app instead of zooming in while recording, but here I remember to zoom in. So much better here, and I'm starting with the darkest color because that's what I felt like doing at the time. Kind of making the lines around the raven a little bit just to make it a little bit more clear and easier for me to color inside of the lines. And then I go in, of course, with the darker colors first and the lighter colors last. And I wanted a little bit of a shine on the bottom part of the beak as well, or the top part of the bottom part of the beak. Yes, this is complicated. Anyway, some more lines, and for the beak, of course, it has to be very smooth, with a smooth effect. So that's why I use a marker on top of the colors, just to get a bit of a richer color, as well as making things a lot more smooth. But when I go into more of the feathers later on, I will be trying to get more lines that are a lot more clear. The feathers that I am drawing in right now are supposed to be the darkest of the bird because it is underneath the face where the shadow is. So that is why I do not add too many lines in it, but I do try to keep them a little bit spiky in the ends so it looks a little bit more like feathers. And then I use I think it is a cool gray 4 or cool gray 3 on top of it to smooth it out a little bit and make it even more seamless and smooth without texture. This is where I start to think a little bit more about texture and a little bit more about the light, because I've added a lot of shadows and we need some brightness into the cheeks. And in the beginning I wanted to add this kind of feathery texture, so I added like these little more rounded shapes that you can see me drawing in right here. But in the end, I don't know if I very like them all that much, so I do kind of try to cover them with a marker right here, but you can still see them a little bit. And then I will be adding some more texture on top of the marker with a coloring pencil, of course, different types, starting with the black again, because that is what I like to start with usually. Darken up some places, and then I'll be trying to add some more feathery texture. A detail that I really enjoyed about the reference picture that I am using is that the raven had these really, really thin feathers, or almost hair-like feathers, that were behind the beak, and then in the front of the beak they were lighter, or almost whitish. I will be adding the lighter ones in later, but first I wanted to add a lot more feathers and the bigger parts of the face before going in with such small details. So I did that, and also add some more marker here and there. And then I also will be adding some purple. There was not all that much purple in the reference photo that I am following, but I do like to add a little bit more color into my drawings just to make them a little bit more interesting, even though they don't look maybe as realistic. So added some purple in there, and I think that really made the drawing pop a lot better, so I'm really happy with that. And yeah, Just adding a lot of texture before I start on some details such as the eye, which I'm coloring in right here. And I also add some bigger feathers down under the face, which I'm adding in right now in blues, and I will be shading them and adding some purple and trying to get them to look as good as possible. Because at this part, I'm kind of winging this part. This part was not that detailed in the original reference. And here I finally add in the lighter hairs, which I'm using this pretty thick white marker for, and the lines came out a little bit too thick actually, but I do fix it later with some coloring pencils to kind of make them a little bit thinner and more dainty looking. For the neck part, I try to draw pretty quickly in the lines and try to not be too precious about it because the face is kind of the focal point here. So I draw the feathers in quite fast, and they're a lot thicker on the left side of the drawing because the light is supposed to be coming kind of from more of the right side. So I do leave some of that right side area open and without coloring it in, so that is kind of gonna be the highlight. So after I finish that, it is time for the eye, and I shade that with a little bit of black on top, and I'll be adding all of the colors that I have in the feathers. So the blue color, the purple, all of that to try to make the eye look cohesive with the rest of the drawing, I would say. To make the eye pop even more, I decide to add a white border with a white marker, using these kind of more dotted movements to make them look a little bit more interesting. And then I color in the lightning bolts in different colors that I have been using on the bird, but this time in marker and not coloring pencil, because I wanted them to look a little bit smooth, though I do add a little bit more texture with coloring pencils on them as well. And then after a few days, actually, I came back to this page because I wanted to fill in something more, and I had been thinking a lot about it. And I decided in the end that I would just like to add another screaming bird to it. I looked at a lot of different references for birds with their beaks open to try to find a bird that would kind of match the raven. And I thought a lot about it, and I couldn't figure anything out until I saw this owl, and I thought that would be perfect because they're both birds of prey and they can kind of live in a similar climate. So an owl it is. And a weird thing about owls with their beaks open is that they look really freaky from the front, in my opinion. They have this kind of devious, evil smile in a way when they have their beak open. So I tried to turn that devious, evil smile into something a little bit cuter by adding some colors into the eyes and such later on. You'll see, I try to make it cute. I want the colors to match the raven for the most part, so I will be adding some purples and blues as shading in here. But the original owl that I chose has more of this yellow-ish brown color, not in the face specifically, or a little bit in the face as well, but mostly like around the face. Working with a lighter bird is a little bit different from working with a bird that is supposed to be completely black for the most part, in that the texture is going to be a lot more visible because the markers that I'm using are not supposed to make it too dark, if that makes sense. So I do try to add a lot more texture in this face as well, by adding all the lines, and I start with a gray color because the face is almost whitish gray with a little bit of this brownish color that I am adding as well. And yeah, it's hard to find a balance here because the reference photo does not have any blue or purple shadows, so I'm kind of just winging it here as well, trying to add the colors where I think it would make most sense. And I enjoy adding more purpley colors, usually under the eyes or around the cheeks, to kind of make it look like the bird has a blush, if that makes sense. A funny thing that I've not really thought all that much about when looking at owls is that the feathers kind of meet in the center of the face and kind of clash into each other, which makes for this really cute, almost like a mohawk effect, but like in the middle of the face. And I think it's adorable, and I tried to kind of emulate that and make it look good, and I hope I did it justice. First I made the lines look really clear, but then I used a very light gray marker. This time I'm not using a cold gray, but I'm using a warm gray, which kind of contrasts with all of the colder colors that I'll be adding in later, like the blues and such. But I do think it looks quite good so far. And here I'm adding in the beak, and I'm adding in like these baby pinks as well as purple and this very light blue to make a more soft purple-ish color here and there. Here it is time for the eyes, and in the reference photo the eyes are pitch black and terrifying, which I did not want to add in here. So I just started with like black around the borders, and then I added this nice purple color as a little highlight on the underside of the eye, as well as some blue here and there, and then I'll be adding black in the center to give it some eyeballs, and then I will be adding some kind of eyelash-ish-esque lines around the eyes to make it a little bit cuter, and I of course will be adding some highlights as well later on. So here it is time to draw around the face, because now I'm finished with the face for the most part, and these owls have these dark brown feathers that kind of line around the face, so I decided to do that but with purple instead. And then here I started drawing in the wrong direction, but then I realized I need to follow the feather direction, so I do that for the rest of it, and I add some of the brown color here and there, which is what color the bird usually has. So I add that on top just to make it have a little bit of a glimpse of that original color that it's supposed to have. And then I, in the end, add a bunch of marker on top of it to smooth it a little bit out, because it was looking a little bit too rough. And when it's smooth, it is time for the highlights in the eyes. So a little bit of highlight in the eyes as well as around the blacks of the eyes. And yeah, a little bit more white here and there, and I'm pretty much done here actually. Yeah, that is it. Here is a final look at the drawings. I hope you liked this video. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.